We'd like to start off this beautiful morning with a beautiful prayer from Chandler, the White Clay Nation, representing Aaniiih Nakoda College.
Kinihan. Well, hey, Nanisa, Nitha Walk, Nanana, Nina Steak, everybody. I'm Sean Chandler. I'm the president of Aaniiih Nakoda College, and I'm thankful that I was asked to say the prayer. And before I begin, I just want to thank Aaniiih and its staff and Yogita for putting this all together. And I'm very fortunate to and thankful to be involved in the tribal college movement, specifically in our indigenous languages. And I'm thankful that TCUs have been at the forefront and in being inspirational in the promotion of our indigenous languages. And I also want to acknowledge Dr. Richard Littlebear, as he's been one of my role models. I've been working at a tribal college since about 2002, and I watch a lot, I observe, and I always admired him because he always spoke his language and really encouraged everybody to do so with their own native languages. And so I thank you, Richard. And when I was about to become, or when I was thinking about applying to be the president, I asked him, how do you balance all that, the college duties and teaching and the promotion of our language. And I came away from that conversation that you just have to make time, you just have to do it, and because it will be all worth it for the future generations. So thank you. All right, I'll say a prayer here. Behatig Ninaktanan Nababiti, Behatig Ninaktanan Nababiti, Kinehea no wani, Eatsats Otsats Awoniats, Nibi bits of that. Kinehea no wani. Bitanihi Pihi Nanitan, Bitanihi Dawats Nitan, Binin Inikitan, Bitanihi Pihi Nakitan, Nadeha, Binin Inikitan, Itzats Otsats Awoniats, Bitanihi Anakawoots, Anahuathats, Anahu Asanats, Anahu Asitsats, Anahu Uthats, Binin Inikitan, Kanihean Wani. Wait. All right, thank you.
Ready. Thank you, Sean, for those beautiful words and beautiful language there. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, we got a TCU language program showcase starting us off with Navajo Tech, Aaniiih Nakoda College, Fond du Lac Tribal and Community College, Blackfeet Community College.
This is Yogita Antwine. I'm the Native Language Research Director at Aaniiih, and I work with TCU Native Language programs. I will just remind you that there are 29 Native American languages, actually. Let me backtrack. 29 American Indian and Alaska Native languages taught at our 33 tribal colleges and universities. And those 29 languages represent 10 language families and 1 language isolate. So there is a lot of diversity. And this is what we're trying to show at this conference, to celebrate the language work that is being done at TCUs, and celebrate the language workers that are doing that work. And I mentioned yesterday that there were virtual TCU site visits done with all 33 tribal colleges that teach languages. And after that, we had regional planning meetings. And the top priority in those planning meetings was the need for networking and the need for a conference like this. So here we are a year later, meeting virtually, and hopefully this meeting will move to in-person space when we can, maybe even next year. And this is the first of the annual TCU Native Language Conferences.
Thank you, Jaquita. I'm going to take a moment even to give a brief introduction of myself, where I'm from. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, I am your MC for today, and I want to thank Aaniiih for inviting me to do so in representing my people of the Chippewa Cree Nation of Rocky Boy, Montana, as well as the Atakako Preserve of Saskatchewan, as well as my Dakota and Lakota blood from the Fort Peck tribes. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, we are just gradually getting into sticking to our time frame here, starting off at 11:15. We want to welcome each and every one of you that are slowly coming in to the virtually into the Zoom today. We have an amazing 53 participants and counting. And also we want to encourage you to tell each other good morning in your languages through the chat there. Check on each other through the messaging system. There's no problem and no way of wrong way of going about the communication today. And we also and once again, I want to thank each and every one of the elders and those that are that have laid the foundation for us today to continue this language. It's we really want to emphasize this continuing on.
TCU Language Programs Showcase, Session 2. Goose is the faculty member, Anishinaabe language instructor at Fond du Lac Tribal and Community College. So here you go, the floor is yours.
Bonjour, Junior Indigenous, Makwan Dudem, Kazalis Quadrime Kalin Dunjiba, Vidashama, Nigminting in Dianungu. Nigikino Mage, Amana Gajuana, Kabega Kendasugum, Anishinaabe Moin Nigikino Mage. Bonjour, my name is Aaniiih or Michelle Goose, my English name. I'm from the Bear Clan. I'm from the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe, which is just a little bit west here of Fond du Lac, where I teach at the Fond du Lac Tribal and Community College. I'm the Anishinaabe language instructor here. When I'm not here at the college teaching language, which I'm here pretty much every day and pretty much throughout the whole day, I have a 3-year-old daughter who I also try my best to speak Ojibwe to at home. So when I'm not here teaching Ojibwe, I'm chasing her around and speaking Ojibwe to her, potty training her in Ojibwe. So pretty much my whole day revolves around the Ojibwe language. First, I'll talk a little bit about myself and my language journey as well. So I wasn't raised speaking a language like I'm trying to do with my daughter now. I grew up on the Leech Lake Reservation, which is right over here, kind of in the middle of Minnesota. So I grew up on the reservation, and when I was growing up, we still had quite a few speakers. I had speakers in my family. My father and my aunts and uncles, they were older, so they could speak the language, but they didn't really speak it conversationally with us at home. So I just heard like words and phrases growing up that I knew just from what I heard in the community and a little bit in the home, but not too much, just kind of words and phrases here and there. But for me, that was enough to motivate me to continue a lifelong journey of learning the Ojibwe language. So I had the opportunity to take it throughout high school. I participated in language quiz bowls, kind of a fun competition throughout high school, which motivated me as a introverted but competitive person. That was fun for me as a high school student. And then as I got into college, I went to the University of Minnesota, Twin Cities, where I got to learn from some very brilliant linguists and some talented second language speakers. So there I got a good foundation that I could continue learning and to build upon my experience. So just kind of starting out in college, I focused more on the language there, whereas growing up, it was just kind of something that I did for fun. As I got older, I decided that I wanted to be able to speak the language, not just know words and phrases. So I got really serious about it in college. And then after college, I came up here to the tribal college where I worked with a group of learners like myself to start the Ojibwe Motarida Immersion Academy, which is still going here. It's an extension program that we have at the college. And that allows learners like myself and others to work directly with first language speaking elders. And through that immersion experience is where I really was able to build my fluency to be able to speak conversationally in Ojibwe. So we are here on the Fond du Lac Reservation, this red arrow here. We're a tribal and community college. So most of our tribal students are from Fond du Lac, so they're Fond du Lac band members. And then we have a mix of Fond du Lac tribal members and then just kind of general students from the Cloquet, Duluth, Carleton area. We also have a partnership with Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe. So we have a larger group of tribal students from Mille Lacs as well. A lot of them take online classes, and then we also have distance delivery options for them. Used to be ITV, now they mostly join the classes through Zoom. So the language classes here are a mix of students in person and then students in Mille Lacs and other locations joining via Zoom now. We also have a decent body of TCU students. So in the class, I'll have a wide range of ages from high school students from the local Cloquet High School, the public school, and then also from the Fond du Lac Ojibwe School. And then I've had some well-respected elders from the community in the classroom as well. And then just kind of your traditional age college students. We also have Mille Lacs tribal employees who just kind of take the language on their lunch breaks. The Mille Lacs Band is really good about supporting the language and supporting their tribal members to learn the language. So their tribal employees, they can take the language and have their tuition paid for by the tribe. And then we also have elementary education students. So part of our elementary education program here is that students are required to take at least one semester of Anishinaabe language. Okay, Kino Maduin. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the curriculum. So this word Kino Maduag is kind of my personal teaching philosophy. It's a reciprocal word. So in Ojibwe, that means that it's not just me teaching the students and they're not just kind of passively sitting in the classroom learning, but it's a reciprocal relationship where I'm learning from them, they're teaching each other, and then I'm also teaching them, of course, as an instructor. But I encourage them to also interact with each other and to help each other. Sometimes it's a little bit easier for students to learn a challenging concept from their fellow students. So I'm always trying to learn from my students as well as teaching them and guiding them and encouraging them to learn from each other. And then we also have our cultural standards, Dijitwawan and Anin. So these are the Anishinaabe 7 grandfather teachings, which guide our American Indian Studies curriculum. And the Anishinaabe language classes are part of the American Indian Studies curriculum. So we have 2 programs here. We have our American Indian Studies AA degree, and then we also have the language certificate, and they're kind of interweaved. So our cultural standards, Gikain Dasawin, knowledge, Goyakwadiziwin, Zungide Ewin, Anguamizuin, Dewewin, Zagiduin, and Joinaduin. And these are also the standards, the teachings that I use to kind of guide my everyday classroom interactions with students, and I remind them to also follow them in their interactions with each other. So those are my guiding philosophical principles. Also try to focus on the land and kind of what's happening outside. We talk about the seasons as they're changing every day. Once I kind of get the students in the introduction level set, we talk about the seasons, the months, the days, the weather every day to start our class. So we're always trying to pay attention to what's happening outside, what's happening with the animals, the different harvests that are happening. In my Anishinaabe language 4 class right now, we're doing the same unit. So I have some red willow sticks in the classroom here. We've been trying to make red willow tobacco. I had brought in some other sticks for another teaching earlier in the month, and when I brought in this new set of sticks, my students were like, oh, more sticks. So because I have a mix of students in person and then also joining via Zoom, I can't get outside as much as I like to, so I try to bring the inside or the outside in whenever I can. I always have lots of sticks and leaves and other items in the classroom. We also talk about plants and animals and just try to pay attention to everything that's happening outside as we go throughout our year. My language teaching philosophy is a communicative approach. So I try to focus on interaction in the classroom. A lot of it is just kind of me asking students questions and responding. Then I also try to get them interacting with each other as much as possible. So we focus on communication. Kind of their end of the unit assessments are always either a conversation or some type of presentation. So it's always building towards a communication task. And one specific method that has been helpful for me is a communication-based instruction, which is a method for planning bursts of immersion in the target language. So one of my goals is to kind of work up to full immersion, and I'm just kind of working there as I build the curriculum here. So this has been one way to incorporate bursts of immersion. So I'll have like 1 to 2 lessons every week that are more targeted immersion. And this was provided through various workshops through the Indigenous Language Institute. So I had the opportunity to attend different workshops throughout my career, focused on communication-based instruction. And then just a little bit about assessment. So I have kind of your everyday worksheet where students are like practicing different grammar topics, maybe translating a bit, and then also a focus on oral conversations. So their main assessment at the end of the unit is an oral conversation where they have a short conversation, maybe about the weather or about snow. We're working on right now. Oh, right now we're working on a house unit. So at the end of the unit, they'll describe their home. So either a conversation with myself or a conversation with other students or just describing the topic that we've been working on. One assignment that I found very effective for students is Memrise. You can find that at memrise.com. It's similar to Duolingo, I think is a popular language learning system. So they have, for majority languages, they have courses that are already built where you can just go in there and learn Spanish. For Ojibwe, since it's not one of the majority languages, I have to go in there and build my own online flashcards, but that has been very effective for students. And then I also have them do projects. So my kind of end goal is that students will continue to learn throughout their lives, and that they'll hopefully teach others, whether that's their family or if they go on to teach. So I have projects as well. I can stop sharing quick and just show a couple of projects. So this is one from a feelings unit. I give them options, and someone made a feelings chart. This is one from a calendar unit. So I try to make it open-ended so they can express themselves however they choose. So this is a calendar on the turtle's back, painting that a student did. So we offer 4 semesters of Anishinaabe language here. If students complete the entire 4 semesters, they earn an Anishinaabe language certificate. Starts off with introduction, kind of your beginning level, and then continues to Anishinaabe language 4. So if students take the language throughout the entire 2 years that they're here, they can earn a language certificate. I build the curriculum around thematic units, and I try to build it around the seasons, what's happening at different points in time of the year. These are just a few of the different units that I have. So it starts off in the introduction course with introduction. So students are learning to introduce themselves by name, introduce themselves by clan. Since we have kind of a mix of Anishinaabe and then non-native students from the community, they also learn how to say they don't have a clan if that's not from their background, and try to be open and inclusive with all of those teachings that that are built into the curriculum. And then we have a calendar unit, so that kind of builds on our start routine where we talk about the seasons, the months, the days, and then eventually the weather every day as we start the class. And then also learning numbers within that. Talk about the weather. My students, by the end of the 4 semesters, they're very good about talking about the weather. They can tell you what type of snow is on the ground, if it's dirty snow, if it's high snow, or if it's low snow. They can tell you what type of snow is falling. We just wrapped up a boom unit in Anishinaabe language 4, and they can describe the snow very well and all the different types of weather. Also have an animal unit, so just kind of learning the names of the animals and then how to describe their physical descriptions and where they live. We're getting towards the end of the 4th semester, so I have some more advanced units in the end of the sequence. So right now we're working on a Semi unit. So we started that with learning how to make the traditional red willow tobacco. We're going to be looking at different uses for tobacco, so how people use it in everyday prayer and ceremony. And then students will also learn a prayer or a nursery rhyme talking about tobacco. So I always try to learn from my students and meet their needs and be responsive to their needs. So earlier on, I had an elder in the classroom. She was like, I could talk really well about the weather, but I want to learn how to pray. So I decided to incorporate an Semi unit where they can learn to pray if they want to. And then just wrapped up a baboon unit. So in Ojibwe, we have very descriptive vocabulary and lots of words about snow. At least 100 words to describe snow. So you can describe it as it's falling, describe how it looks on the ground, and then also describe how people interact with the snow. So we just got into some of those, and then also looked at winter stories. So our Waynabuju stories, and then our stories about animals and how they got some of their different characteristics. Also a Menominikewan unit that was in 3rd semester. So learning the words for the different tools to harvest monoman, and then also the different steps for that process. And then also a family unit, which is a more advanced unit that will finish in Anishinaabe language 4. And then throughout the 4 semester sequence, I'm also working students up with their more knowledge of Ojibwe morphology. So in Ojibwe, we have descriptive word parts that you can combine to make different words. So I try to point out the different parts with the descriptive meanings and teach students how they can combine the parts to create their own words eventually. At the start, it's kind of maybe a little bit overwhelming for them, but by the end of the 4th semester, they're starting to be creative with the language, and they can recognize a variety of parts and then put different parts together productively. And then as a lifelong learner myself and second language speaker, I'm also trying to prepare them to continue their learning. Most of my students, the majority of the students are of Anishinaabe ancestry, so they're here trying to learn more about themselves, and it will be a lifelong journey for them, trying to learn their own language. So I try to embed skills and strategies for learning into the curriculum as well. So like learning how to use the dictionary. I have assignments that are focused on exploring different resources, and then also try to point out different resources as we're going through the curriculum. I think that's speaking about you, that's all I have. I think I'm within the 10 minutes. Miigwech.
Well, thank you, Michelle. Thank you for showing us these beautiful things. It was very informative. And our other panelists today, I would like to point out that today, folks, we're taking this to a little different level, to the next level of these presentations. We have people in the TCU language revitalization. We're very lucky that some of the presidents of TCUs are actually involved in the language work, along with being presidents. And one of those people is Dr. Sean Chandler, who is president at Aaniiih Nakoda College. And he agreed to share today with us about the language work they're doing, and it's a lot. So we have him on 2 sessions today. So thank you again for agreeing to share your information with us and being part of this intense day. And the floor is yours.
All right. Give me a hand for those nice words. And I know I introduced myself. I'm Sean. I'm the president of Aaniiih Nakoda College in north central Montana. And I've been here since January of 2002. And you know, it's funny, I type out, whenever I do presentations, you know, I'll type out what I'm gonna say. And then I always end up making handwritten notes on the sides, and then I can't ever read my writing afterwards. So I don't know why I do that, but anyway, so bear with me if I get confused what I'm looking at here. But I started out, it was actually my wife that wanted to create this immersion school. And it was at that time when she wanted to do that, we didn't even think about working at our tribal college here. We were both living in Bozeman, Montana, getting our master's degrees, and that was just, she had this inclination to do this. And at the time, I was about set to embark on my art career as I was slowly rising up in that. And then she wanted to do this. It was a really deep desire. So I said, well, I'll help you. And I didn't say anything at first that she wanted to move back to the Fort Belknap Indian Reservation. And I just said, okay. And she went around and asked some of her role models or elders and her parents and everybody, my parents. And, there was only one person out of all that bunch that said, that gave a positive response. And that was my dad. And the same dad, the same dad that when I was young, I think he had me learn a prayer and some other things. And, but he more or less said I should, get an education and go as far as I can go in education. Kind of saying, don't worry about it. You'll be all right in life, from the things I've taught you so far. And so that was a surprise to me that he was the only one that was really positive. And he told her, well, yeah, let's do it. And so he was even including himself in that. And he even said, I'll give you land, on our, it's about 15 miles from here, but he said, I'll give you land there. You could build your school there. all that. And so, but then there was an opportunity with the college, our tribal college got a grant, and so she ended up applying here to get involved in the speaker learner project, and then shortly thereafter I came, and because they had a grant to develop an American Indian Studies degree program, and so I helped develop that. But so within the speaker learner project, she, still had this desire to educate children, and so she just had asked the president at the time, which was also my mother, and so we're lucky we had her, because all her life she always promoted Indigenous lifeways wherever she worked, whether it was at Dawson Community College in Glendive, Montana, where we were the only Native people there, and she brought in speakers from all the surrounding reservations at that time in Montana, and so she was really positive. So we had good leadership that they had it in their mind to really embark on this endeavor to get the language back in practice. So so Lynette started this school, and I ended up helping out in it and teaching. And I'm not fluent myself, but I began to learn as much as I could, and spending time with the elders that were helping out in that speaker learner project. I was one of the learners, I guess. And so I got to the point where I knew enough to teach. And when you teach, that's a different story than just learning. That's where you really pick up all of your, you really gain that the conversational piece. But so she founded this school in 2003. It began as an after-school program, and we had to use a classroom that wasn't being wasn't being used, like after about 3 or 4 p.m. every day. And we brought the kids in, and a couple of years later, we became a full day school within the college. And I believe that ANC here was the first one, or the only one at the time, to operate an immersion school for children, an actual K or first grade through 8th grade school in underneath its college. And we use various methodologies, and let's see, maybe I'll advance the slide now. We do like TPR, we take the children out and get involved out in the field, so to speak. There you see them harvesting some sweetgrass, and on the left there, it's actually my youngest. She's a graduate of our school, and she's a senior now in a local public school. But here she serves as a mentor. So we brought a few of our graduates back as mentors when they were in high school. A few of them went to a particular school around here where Fridays they don't go to school. They only go to school Monday through Thursday. So we utilize that. We utilize them on Fridays to come in and serve as mentors and role models for these young ones. And they're on the left there, they're processing choke cherries to make choke cherry patties. And that picture in the middle there, that was we used to have, at the end of the year, we'd have little gatherings between them and the people that are sitting behind them, the actual fluent speakers. And all of those fluent speakers, probably, that picture was probably taken 2004. All of those speakers there, within probably 5 years of that being taken, they all died. They're all gone. So our language is in pretty dire straits. We don't have any fluent, first language speakers. Like I said, they all died about that, maybe 2010 or so, around there, plus or minus a couple years. And so in our Aaniiih language, the one that's taught here, this is the only place in the world that it can be taught. There's no other reservation or in Canada or in United States that has that is the same language as us, or the same tribe as us. We're closely related to the Arapaho, though, but there's still a difference, a slight difference of language there. But so this came along, at a time when it was really needed, and at least these elders got to see that and keep their hopes alive too, as they were involved in this language. And let me advance this. And so I'll focus on the main kind of methodology that we do. We do others, TPR. We do that storytelling. We teach them how to read and write, write in the language. But our main focus, our main methodology has been this accelerated second language acquisition. And we were taught by by Dr. Gray Morning out of Missoula, Montana. And you start out with 4 pictures, 4 photographs of woman, man, boy, girl, and then you slowly build off of that, add a few animals, objects, then you get into verbs. So it's kind of like that, what they call it, scaffolding type of thing. They just build and build and build their skills, and where they're talking in phrases and things like that. And while you're teaching, you're using the language too, because you're only asking questions in the language. And that's where I felt I started really strengthening my language, was even through this method. So and I became more confident myself. And I was curious one day, you're not supposed to translate anything during this, but I was just curious to know. It was, I don't know how many, it was a month or 2 into it. And I was just curious. So I asked one of the students, what is that? I wanted them to translate in English what I was saying, a question I was asking. And I said, do you know what question I'm asking in English? If you could say it in English. And she said, oh yeah, you're just asking, is it this or is it that? Something like, you're saying something like that. And that's when I was really sold on this method. And I really knew something was good here, out of all the various methods that we have done. And but we use a mix, like I said, a mix of methods, but this one is the focus. And when we began this process, I think there were a couple that were a little bit behind the rest as far as speaking ability. But when I put them into this, they didn't catch up to the stronger ones, but they got really good. And because of the stronger ones, of course, only got stronger. So we really liked it. We still do. And there you see on the right there is, that's actually my oldest. And she came back to teach for a year before she went, after she graduated with her associates here at the college. She came back and taught for a year. And she went off to get her bachelor's, but she's supposed to come back. And so we're going to put her right to work. So, but we really like this method. You know, of course, we're open to the to other ones, and that was the dream, you know, of this school, is to create the next generation of speakers and to put it into practice and have our graduates come back and teach. And so that was one of the dreams of the founder, my wife. And currently I'm the I made a co-director position. I'm kind of the director, but I'm slowly kind of giving it to one of the other instructors here. But I had to become director in 2017 on the death of the founder, my wife, and I think, you know, we're very fortunate she had this vision to do this, and we really try to continue it to be put in practice. And but you know, it's difficult. We have our challenges, and especially with the pandemic, you know, we had to shift a lot of our teaching online during that time. But hopefully we will weather that storm and you know, still continue. And let's see what else. Another trick I've done to, I mentioned this yesterday in another talk I gave, is our students too have maybe they have a lack of confidence in getting up there and teaching. And so I train them a little bit on how to teach. And then, but they always, if I'm around, they rely on me to do it, and they won't step up. So a few times I've kind of, you know, you push them in the water, I suppose. I would pretend that I had a meeting across the street, and they know my duties have changed as I've been president, so they believe me when I have all these meetings and stuff. And I do have a lot of meetings, but I would pretend I had a meeting across the street so that they had to do it. I said, "Will you take over for me?" And so that's worked actually. And so then they do it enough times, and they come back. You know what? I think I like this teaching. I'm confident now. So that's a good thing. And you know, myself, I was really nervous too, but you just have to do it. Let's see, how much time do I have? I'm about done anyway, but let's see what else. And then when we assess them too in that method, I was finding out, you know, a lot of them can identify, if, you know, in the language you could say, point to the bear running or something like that, and they'll be able to identify that. But when you flip it and say, "What's this bear doing?" Some of them weren't. You could tell that they were understanding the language, but they couldn't speak it back somehow. You know, that's more or less what I was gathering. And so that, you know, makes me think, okay, I gotta, you know, rethink how this is going, and reinforce it so that they are able to identify, you know, when you say, ask them, "What's he doing?" or whatever. So when I assessed them, I was initially asking them and then writing the response, but it was interrupting when they would have to wait, and then they might worry about what I'm writing. So I started taping them, and that turned out to be better. And I could look at the tape later and then analyze. It flows better. What else? So then our next challenge is, they do well in the walls of our class or our school. The next stage is getting them over to outside of the walls of our school, so that they practice the language in their everyday lives, at home, and things like that. And that's the next thing we really need to do, and get them confident in not being held back by their lack of confidence or whatever that may be. So that's about all I had.
Oh, thank you. That was good to hear, and that was good to see. And we appreciate that. And speaking about the only place in the world where a language is taught, or maybe even about the first place in the world that offers something, like the Navajo Technical University. I hear that it's on its path to be the first, let's call it the first place in the world that will offer a PhD in the Navajo language. So let's hear from Dr. Tuttle.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Siri Tuttle, and I'm a professor of Navajo Linguistics at Navajo Tech. But I've worked with languages other than Navajo from the same family for 30 years. And I'm a newcomer, relatively speaking, in Navajo country. I just came to work there in the fall after retiring from the Alaska Native Language Center, where I was for 18 years. And I'm very excited to be at this conference. This is, I love what I'm hearing. I'm so impressed with the philosophical strength and the educational solidity of what people are giving us. It's really, really great. I'm part of the Dene Studies Department, and we have two pieces to it. So we have an undergraduate program in Dene Culture, Language, and Leadership, and a graduate program in Dene Culture, Language, and Leadership. The undergraduate program delivers most of the, or all of the instruction in language, and it's led by Assistant Professor Sharon Nelson with the help of Dana Desiderio and Lupita Chakag, Bonnie Yazzie, and Bond Wilson, and others. In the graduate program, I've recently been joined by Dr. Franklin Sage, and the two of us are working together with our new graduate dean, Dr. Wafa Hosian, on the new graduate programs. So at present, we do offer these certificates: Navajo Court Transcription and Interpretation, which I'll answer questions about that if people have questions. It's really interesting, but I don't want to take up the time now. Textiles and Weavings, the Navajo Voter Translation course. And then we have our BA in Dene Culture, Language, and Leadership, and our MA, where Franklin and I are teaching in Dene Culture, Language, and Leadership. Our programs are built on the Navajo philosophy of education, starting with Mitzvahkes, thinking, right? And going on to Nahata, planning, and Aaniiih, doing, and Sihasin, reflection. And the cycle goes on. The cycle is continuous, and the pieces of it are part of our program development. So really this began with the work of Wesley Thomas, who was an old classmate of mine from the University of Washington. It was his thinking that got language built into the Dene Studies program at NTU starting in 2012. And his concept for this program is that it would help language workers develop in whichever direction they could develop as teachers, as cultural leaders, as government employees and leaders, because we need people working with language in all of those areas. So philosophy, thinking, learning, and instilling values and helping people have their cultural identity are that's what this program is built on, but it doesn't work without the language. So the language is required. You really have to do it. Okay. But there's a process for entering the program, because we know that students on the Navajo Reservation are coming in with different kinds of prior experiences with the language. Some of them are very, very proficient already, and some of them really need a lot more help. And so they're asked to identify themselves when they come in. Are you a speaker? If they are, fine, they're going to go right into the speaker class. But if they're not so sure, they can do an oral proficiency interview along the lines of the ACTFL guidelines, which we talked about yesterday. And by the way, thank you for that, because then I don't have to talk about it a lot. So if a person interviews at the novice level, then they can enter classes for non-speakers. But if they interview higher than that, then they can enter classes for speakers. There's a graphic for the the wonderful stacking of levels that ACTFL makes possible. I've also seen this applied in the Alaskan programs, and I think it's really, really useful. You might think of it as an imposition of some Western structure on the language, but because it is cross-linguistic by nature, it really requires the insight of a speaker to interpret it. So it's just a structure on which you can build what you need. We talked about this stuff yesterday, so I can actually skip it. But what's important to me about the ACTFL guidelines is that they're not about taking a test on paper. Many of us can take a test on paper, and then when we're in a conversation, we're suddenly lost, right? That would be me. I'm a novice. But the way that this is structured, it's really about what you could do with the language, and that's what we want people to be building, is what they can do with the language, right? So planning, right? So what at present we are planning, and we are continuing to plan and replan and review the programs that we have, right? These programs are intended to build people's strengths in language and in research and in the ability to lead other people. And so as we go into our creation of the PhD, that's what we're thinking about all the way. And it requires a lot of creativity, because we want to balance truthfulness to the cultural reality with what's required in order to be a PhD. The MA program in Dene Culture, Language, and Leadership was approved only in 2013, and the first graduate was in 2016, and the fairly large cohort was graduated in July, with a few others following in December. The students are focusing on culturally grounded questions, and many of them are deeply connected with language. We have had one thesis that was written in Navajo, and I hope to see more of those. This is what we're working on now, a PhD in Dene culture and language sustainability. So the idea is to prepare people to do research, but to lead research in education and community, and for providing tribal services to perpetuate the Navajo language and culture. Because revitalization in itself doesn't quite cover what we're going to have to do in order to make the languages viable in the next generations. So our curriculum includes language structure and linguistics, applied linguistics topics like language acquisition and revitalization, culturally based social science research, and we are also hoping to bring in guest scholars and other visitors to help us enrich our program. Our second draft of the program will be submitted to the Higher Learning Commission this spring. So you might ask, we're at the Aaniiih part, the doing part. You might ask, why is the Biligana linguist the one here talking about this, and not somebody who's got the direct experience teaching in the classroom? Naturally, I was at Sharon's feet saying, please, please, don't you want to do this, please? And she's like, well, I have to go do some recruiting. And the fact is that our language workers are working so hard that we just need all the help that we can get. And so I was very glad to step in and be the representative, even though I can't talk about language of pedagogy. It's not my field at all. This is the moment, though, to say that one of the things we really need to be working on is solid support for programs, so that the people can keep working in them, keep being supported themselves, and thereby support the students and the languages. So this is the sihasan part, the evaluation. As we get out of COVID, I think everybody's learned a huge amount from this. And the situation of colleges and universities that sit in relatively remote areas, I think there's a lot that we can learn from the experience of going online during COVID and going distance, because there are ways to do distance education well, and our students need that. At Crown Point, people have to drive so far sometimes just to get to class that we can improve our delivery and make it available to more people. if we actually expand our online services, and we're thinking about this a lot. But then we get into other questions, and these have to do with balancing the forces of the need to be culturally connected, which is like that's the rock bottom. That's where we really need to be doing that. But the university has to survive, and that means that it has to grow programs as well as building them. You can build all you want, but unless you support that and continue to make it viable, it will not make it. And we need to be reliable. We need to have our colleagues be able to rely on us and turn to us so that we can have our collaborations enrich our students' experience. We need that. So we need to grow. We need to stay culturally grounded. And these kinds of forces can pull on a Native Studies department, because the need to keep language at the heart of it is one of the things that can keep programs small, because it's hard. And everybody knows it's hard to be a language learner and to commit to that. So these are things that we are thinking about as we go on in building the PhD program. Exactly how's the delivery system going to work? I don't think we're quite there yet, but we are working on it, and we have our best hopes for opening perhaps in 2023. And thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Well, that was good to hear.